investigated, and a range of other allegations. And the people making the complaints believe that they were promised that the recommendations of the barristers on this independent review mechanism were going to be followed by the minister once they had been issued. But some of the families now have learned that the minister has to agree with those recommendations before releasing them. This has been confirmed to Drive Time by sources in the Department of Justice. So at the moment there are 320 cases that are being considered by the review, and most of the work of the panel has been concluded and complainants are now in the process of being written to. But what has given cause for concern is that the minister has this effective veto, and that obviously undermines the independence of this independent review mechanism if its conclusions are only going to be released if they tally with the minister's view of a case. And this is obviously particularly problematic given that the department itself is the subject of some of these complaints.
And who's complaining about this lack of independence?
Any number of different people, but today I spoke to a large number of people, but among them Shane Tuohy's family. Now, we have focused on Shane Tuohy's suspicious death on this programme and the questions that Gardaí have to answer there for about 9 years now. Most recently, we highlighted how CCTV tapes from the night that Shane disappeared, obviously absolutely key to the investigation and supposedly missing all this time, have in fact been in Garda possession all of this time. Well, the Tuohys sent all of this additional information and much else besides to the independent review mechanism, but they have no idea if it was received, if it was read, if it was considered, or if any action was taken on it. So the Tuohys, remember, have been at odds with the department and the Garda Commissioner for many years now. So obviously it follows that it is hard for them to have any confidence in a review that is not entirely independent. And it's Edwin Tuohy who told me, that's Shane Tuohy's brother, told me this afternoon that they had learned that letters would only be sent out if the minister agreed with the recommendations in the letters.
Our case was looked at about a week and it was completed, and it was sent from the panel review back to the Minister of Justice, and she was to look at it, and she was to send it to someone else for them to look at it, and then it was to go back to the Minister for her to look at it again, and if she wasn't happy with what the panel review had reported on it, or their view of what the recommendations, what should happen with each case, you wouldn't get a letter or you wouldn't be made any the wiser of it. That's what we're led to believe.
So in essence you were being told that the minister has to agree with the recommendations.
Yeah, 100%. Simply, that's the way it's going. So basically, as you can see, it was only a time, it was only a stop the clock thing with the election, and that was all just to hold us out until they got over the election. So we were never going to get anything out of it anyway.
Well, that's how you've been left feeling about it, but does it raise questions in your mind as to how independent this independent review mechanism is if the minister has to agree with the recommendations that it makes before sending them on to you?
You answer the question in itself. Sure, how can it be independent? It's not independent, and it never was.
There's a well-documented history of antagonism between the Department of Justice and your family over the case of your brother's death. Are you worried now about how authoritative, how correct this report is going to be, given that she is not going to publish these recommendations unless she agrees with them?
Well, obviously we are, because up to this, for the last 13 years, all we've been told is lies. Lie after lie. So what do I expect now? Nothing.
That's Edwin Tuohy there. Now, Philip, does this call the independence of this independent review into question?
It was a flawed process right from the start, according to the opposition, Mary. The complainants didn't get to make their case in person. The review was a paper-only process, and this left people wondering, what paper, what file? What are the barristers in the review seeing here? Are they seeing everything that's relevant to our case, or only a selected amount of documents? And if only a selected amount of documents, by whom have they been selected? And now, today, it emerges that although a retired judge has been appointed to ensure that the letters are objective in their summary of the review, those letters are only going to be issued if the minister agrees with what is in them. And this is supported. We should have really seen this coming, because the says, a written answer that she gave to the Dáil back in April that I've just gone looking back over, in which she says, and I'm quoting directly now, "In coming to a decision in each case, I will be very strongly guided by the independent advice of counsel. Quite clearly, having engaged counsel for this review, it would be entirely appropriate to be guided by their advice." Guided by their advice being, well, quite clearly not agreeing to be bound by their independent view. And when I spoke to Fianna Fáil's Justice spokesperson, Niall Collins, he was concerned about what controversies are now going to potentially be buried as a consequence of this effective veto of the ministers.
Now that people are hearing today that the minister will only issue recommendations from the panel if she agrees with the recommendations herself, that will really upset people because it effectively undermines the independence of the panel. So I think there's huge concern being heaped onto further concern by the people whose cases are before the panel, and it's certainly something that I'll be bringing up when the Dáil returns.
If you'll allow me to mix my metaphors, is dirty linen being swept under the carpet here?
Certainly, I think the confidence in the independence of the system, the independent review mechanism, is now being called into question. And, people feel that by not getting an opportunity to interact face-to-face with the independent panel, and now learning that the recommendations of the panel may be vetoed by the minister or indeed by the government, there's certainly huge cause for suspicion that some dirty linen will be swept under the carpet, surely.
And there is a huge amount of suspicion out there. I've talked to a lot of the different families who have lodged complaints with the review mechanism, and they say that the whole exercise has been nothing more than a cynical kick for touch by the government and the minister. They told me that they felt it was designed to neutralise the very real concerns about how justice was being administered by the Gardaí, the DPP, the department and the courts, and that it is now all just being strung out to get the government beyond the election.
Anything from the department? What do they have to say?
Well, I've read you that written answer to the question in the Dáil in which the minister says that she was only ever going to be guided by what the barristers say, and that's obviously key to the department's position here. On the timeline then of when they are going to actually inform people of the outcome, i.e. will it be before the election or have they kicked out beyond the election, they say, and I am quoting now in a masterful piece of Sir Humphreyism, "It has begun and will continue till it is concluded, but it is not possible to say when that will be."
You told us about 300 cases at the outset. How many have got their letters?
The department have indicated that 54 or more of the 320 should have gotten their letters by now, and I've only been able to identify 2 who have received letters, both of them rather abruptly rejecting their complaints. Anne-Marie Cullen's daughter was killed in a traffic accident, and she believes that was never properly investigated. She's disturbed now because she feels she's never going to know what they did and that they didn't look at in this review, because she's not going to get a copy of it, and her case has, as I say, been rejected completely out of hand. She got me the rather abrupt, she read to me rather, the rather abrupt letter that she had got.
Having considered the papers in your case, Council does not recommend further action by the Minister. The Minister has asked me to let you know that she has accepted the recommendation of Council.
Is that enough for you, Anne-Marie?
No, it isn't.
Why not?
It isn't enough because, Philip, we don't know what they actually investigated. We have nothing on paper to see what they did actually investigate. We don't know what they took into consideration.
Did you ever get to put your case and to, if you like, set out what it is that you were dissatisfied with or that you thought needed investigation?
No, we weren't. We were never contacted about anything.
So does that leave you with a rather hollow feeling at the end of this process then?
Well, it does. It seems to be just another time-wasting process. It seems to be just playing. It's just delayed tactics, it seems to be.
Is that it, Philip, for Anne-Marie Cullen and others like her who received similar letters?
Well, number one, I would say let's wait and see, because there may be some recommendations here that are actually followed, and there may be commissions of inquiry. But for the most part, there seems to have been some quite adroit politics played here, because the Minister has if you like, successfully kicked for touch, and there isn't sufficient weight or movement behind the lobby group that was set up here, Justice4All, it wouldn't be even remotely comparable to the anti-water charge campaigns or anything like that, because after all, these are individual cases, 320 individual tragedies, if you like, or alleged tragedies, and it is difficult to see large public support mobilised